Cinema Wellman. I'm your host, David, and today we're going to finally remember Robert Redford and briefly talk about 10 favorite movies of his. If you're a frequent visitor to Cinema Wellman, you know that we just paid tribute to Gene Hackman, who we recently lost as well, and then just last week I heard that Diane Keaton had died. Sadly, it seems like a weekly occurrence when a performer I admired growing up passes away. I guess I'm solidly in that age range where this is going to happen more frequently, which makes me even more nostalgic than I usually am. But I'm also reminded that with artists, they leave behind so much of themselves that we get to enjoy them for as long as we're here enjoying things, which is nice. Robert Redford was an actor, director, and producer whose lasting legacy to film may be his creation of the Sundance Film Festival, which began in 1978 to showcase independent films. He was a four-time Oscar nominee, one as an actor, one as a producer, and two as a director, which proves that Redford wasn't just an actor. He did as much behind the camera as he did in front of the camera. He was awarded an honorary Oscar in 2002 for his contributions to film in general. Redford's only Oscar win, other than the honorary, was as director of Ordinary People in 1981, a film which also won Best Picture. When I heard that Robert Redford had passed, the first person I thought of was my mother. Jean loved him. She also loved Paul Newman, who is Redford's co-star in two of today's 10 films, but she really loved Robert Redford. Two of the other movies on this list are here because my mother had me watch them with her. And I watched one of those two films while writing this episode and found it difficult to concentrate since the movie is so wonderful. Thank you, Mom, for those recommendations and instilling in me a love of movies that will never leave me. Here are my favorite Robert Redford films in some kind of order, I guess, but I didn't officially number them because they're all special to me in one way or another. Let's begin with Robert Redford as Paul Bratter in Barefoot in the Park, 1967. Rated G, 106 minutes. 7.0 on IMDb, directed by Gene Saks. I've seen 30 of Robert Redford's movies, and this is one of the two on today's list that's here for Gene. It's also the film I tried to watch while preparing this episode, and that did not go well at all. I don't think I wrote a word. Based on the play by Neil Simon, Barefoot in the Park is a delightful romantic comedy about a newlywed couple and the struggles they face when they rent their first apartment, which is a rundown 5-flight New York City walk-up with eccentric neighbors. Robert Redford's new wife is Jane Fonda, who is absolutely amazing in this film. She is so sexy and energetic and full of love, no matter how much of a downer her new husband tends to be. Mildred Natwick plays Jane Fonda's mother, and she was nominated for a supporting actress Oscar for this performance, and it was well deserved. I sent Vanessa 2 separate clips of Natwick at her exasperated best, and including a quote, "If the hardware store downstairs was open, I was going to buy a knife and kill myself." Redford is perfect as the uptight lawyer to Fonda's carefree and vivacious Corey. He is in way over his head with her, and this performance shows that Redford was more than capable of handling a comedy. Next up, definitely not a comedy, Robert Redford as Jay Gatsby in The Great Gatsby 1974, rated PG, 144 minutes, IMDb 6.4, directed by Jack Clayton. I didn't read the novel until I was an adult, which I don't understand since I took AP English. What did they have us read? But I really enjoyed the book, and I think that Robert Redford is a better Jay Gatsby than Leonardo DiCaprio. And I think Redford is also more handsome in the iconic tuxedo, but what do I know? Next up is another comedy, this one bordering on slapstick, and it's the second film that Jean had me watch. She was a big fan of George Segal and found Paul Sand hysterical, and he really is. And they both co-star with Redford as Redford plays Dortmunder in The Hot Rock, 1972 PG, 101 minutes, IMDb 6.8, directed by Peter Yates. If you can find this, and you can't, I highly recommend it. If it ever pops up somewhere, see it. The Hot Rock is a comedy heist action caper in which Dortmunder and his gang plan to steal a huge diamond from a museum. As the plot unfolds, it turns out the gang needs to steal this diamond more than once. Redford's Dortmunder is an exasperated leader, which makes total sense when you look at who he has in that gang. George Siegel, Paul Sand, and the always loony Ron Liebman are the crooks we're rooting for in this comedy that sadly isn't available anywhere. Even DVDs online are going for over $100. Can't find the Hot Rock, and yet there are awful shark and spider movies everywhere. Next, Robert Redford as Jeremiah Johnson in Jeremiah Johnson, 1972, rated GP. And again, there's an upcoming episode that we're going to talk about ratings, and it was rated GP. 108 minutes, IMDb says 7.6, directed by Sidney Pollack. IMDb, a mountain man who wishes to live the life of a hermit becomes the unwilling object of a long vendetta by the Crow tribe and proves to be a match for their warriors in single combat on the early frontier. My mom didn't like this one because Redford's face is covered by a bushy beard, but my dad loved this one because it was filmed in stunningly beautiful Utah locations and a lot of snow. I read that Redford has described this as his favorite of all of his movies because Johnson suffers but perseveres. That means that Robert Redford would be delighted to find Jeremiah Johnson on Cinema Wellman's list of his favorites. Next, Robert Redford as Henry Brubaker in Brubaker, 1980, rated R. 131 minutes, IMDb 7.1, directed by Stuart Rosenberg. IMDb, the new warden of a small prison farm in Arkansas tries to clean it up of corruption after initially posing as an inmate. Was this film the inspiration for Undercover Boss? If we ever do a prison movie episode, I don't think we have. Director Stuart Rosenberg will have 2 films on the list since he also directed Cool Hand Luke. Brubaker is a story of corruption and administrational abuse in a dismal prison farm ruled by sadistic guards that treat its inmates like animals. The cast is stellar, including Yaphet Kotto, Jane Alexander, Morgan Freeman, Cinema Wellman favorite M. Emmett Walsh, and Murray Hamilton. Mayor Larry Vaughn is in this. Where there's Murray Hamilton, there's corruption. Talk about corruption. Next up is a true story of corruption. Or would it be a story of true corruption? Both, I guess. Robert Redford as the real Bob Woodward in All the President's Men, 1976, rated PG, 138 minutes, IMDb 7.9, directed by Alan J. Pakula. On May 28, 1972, the White House plumbers, including E. Howard Hunt and G. Gordon Liddy, broke into DNC headquarters at the Watergate complex for the first time. On August 8, 1974, President Nixon delivered his resignation speech before a nationally televised audience. Everything in between, and I mean everything, was all about Watergate. And I was 10 through 12 at the time, so this was totally in my wheelhouse. I was fascinated by the Watergate scandal from start to finish. I was even one of those kids who rushed home from school to watch the Watergate hearings on television. I know you're out there. Even though I knew the entire story on which this film was based, I was still at the edge of my seat as 2 Washington Post journalists, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, effectively toppled the president. Dustin Hoffman is Bernstein, and the rest of the cast is packed with some of my all-time favorites, Jack Warden, Martin Balsam, and Hal Holbrook, along with Jane Alexander, again, Oscar-nominated for this role, and Jason Robards, who won an Oscar for his portrayal of the Post's editor, Ben Bradley. This is a conspiracy thriller from a time when news organizations were about real journalism and investigative reporting. Next, Robert Redford as Roy Hobbs in 1984's The Natural. Rated PG, 138 minutes, IMDb 7.4, directed by Barry Levinson. Yeah, I realize this movie is really hokey, but it's like my kind of hokey, and I still get goosebumps thinking about the mysterious Roy Hobbs and his almost supernatural heroics on the baseball field. I realize I never seem to shut up about the casts in movies I really like, but when a producer, director, and casting director are able to assemble a top notch cast, you really can't imagine any other actor in any other role. The Natural features strong female characters played by Glenn Close, Kim Basinger, and Barbara Hershey, as well as Robert Duvall as sports writer Max Mercy. Wilford Brimley is wonderful as Roy's coach, Pop Fisher. Big smile just thinking of cinematographer Caleb Deschanel's shot of the exploding scoreboard in Pop's glasses, reflected in Pop's glasses when Roy's home run destroys the scoreboard. This is magical. The book was better. Hokey or not, this is magical. Next, more conspiracy. Robert Redford is Turner in 3 Days of the Condor, 1975. Rated R, 117 minutes. IMDb says 7.4. Directed by Sidney Pollack. We love Sidney. We love Sidney's movies here at Cinema Wellman, and this one's an absolute doozy. IMDb, a bookish CIA researcher in Manhattan finds all his co-workers dead and must outwit those responsible until he figures out who he can really trust. This cat and mouse conspiracy thriller features the always sinister Max von Sydow, along with the never quite totally trustworthy Cliff Robertson. But Redford's main co-star in this is the terrific Faye Dunaway, whose character is reluctantly drawn into this deadly situation. Both were at the tops of their game when this was made, and they have excellent chemistry on screen. Dunaway is a normal civilian thrust into the world of espionage and assassins, and perfectly portrays what this would be like for a normal civilian. Redford once again plays a character unlike any of his other characters, which is always impressive to me. We have 2 films left to talk about, and both feature the dynamic pairing of Robert Redford with the great Paul Newman, and they were also both directed by the legendary director George Roy Hill. We'll start with Robert Redford as the Sundance Kid in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, 1969. Another one rated M, 110 minutes, IMDb 8.0, and as I mentioned, George Roy Hill directs. We've often spoken about films in which you find yourself rooting for the bad guys, and this is certainly one of them. Based on true outlaws, I'm sure certainly weren't as handsome. This is a fun Western with an ample amount of comedy mixed in. When I had heard of Robert Redford's passing, I spent the next day at work thinking about all of his movies and the joy they'd given me. And one of the scenes I thought of a couple of times was the cliff jump in this movie. It's the iconic scene at the top of a cliff. Butch and Sundance are being chased. They have nowhere to go but down. Sundance, Robert Redford, I don't want to jump. I'm not going to jump. And when Butch presses him on it, the kid admits that he can't swim, prompting Paul Newman's famous line, "Are you crazy? The fall will probably kill you." More proof of the magic of movies. That jump began in Colorado and ended in California. The magic of editing and stuntmen and things like that. The only thing I dislike about this film is the inclusion of the song "Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head," which I thought didn't fit at all. And I just read that Redford thought it was terrible as well. One to go, and it's a Best Picture winner. Robert Redford as Johnny Hooker in 1973's The Sting. Rated PG, 129 minutes, IMDb 8.2. And again, George Roy Hill directs. In one of the shortest synopses in IMDb history, I think, here it is. 2 grifters team up to pull off the ultimate con. That's it. In The Great Gatsby, we got Robert Redford in a tuxedo. But in The Sting, we get Robert Redford and Paul Newman in tuxedos, which automatically makes this a better movie. This has to be counted as one of my all-time favorite films, and one of the reasons I became such a fan of heist movies and movies about con men. Robert Shaw, who you know we have a soft spot for, is the mark in this con, and veteran character actors Charles Durning. Did I ever tell you that Andrew and I painted his brother's house? Ray Walston, Harold Gould, and Eileen Brennan are along for the ride. I just love them. I got to watch that again. Thank you, Robert Redford, for these 10 films, along with the others that brought people joy. And thank you for being a champion for independent filmmaking and independent filmmakers all over, especially in this country. God knows that all the major studios here seem to know how to do is churn out sequels, remakes, series installments, and stuff based on comic books or video games. It's really one of the reasons I canceled my AMC subscription. Well, thank you again, Robert Redford, and that is a wrap from here at Cinema Wellman, where I always feel my mom's presence, but especially today as we celebrated one of our favorites. We hope you're back next time when we present an episode we wrote last year, but was postponed due to that perfect storm that shut down Cinema Wellman for several months. We wrote the blog and posted it, but never shot the episode. So get ready for a Halloween episode in which we rank every movie in the Nightmare on Elm Street catalog. In the Nightmare on Elm Street catalog. And until then, take care.